I want to talk about bumps. And no, not the ones you do in the bathroom. These. Bumpers, or bumps, the short clips that would play between shows on network television channels. You may know them best for their bright and colourful what's coming up next segments on channels such as Nickelodeon and Disney. In fact, the iconic Disney ears were their version of a bump. I'd strongly recommend watching Defunctland's video on Disney's channel theming if you want to know more about Disney bumps. Bumps originated in the early days of television, back when tapes were still being used, out of technical necessity. They allowed operators the time to switch between the tapes and the machines to warm up without leaving jarring cuts or blank screens. Network operators would play a short pre-recorded bumper to fill that time. In the 1970s, bumps got a key boost in popularity thanks to the FCC now requiring them on television programming for children to help distinguish between advertisement and show content. As television advertising grew, there also became an ever-growing need to distinguish between the content of the show and the advertising that followed it, especially when advertising on children-focused networks or your classic Saturday morning cartoons. Bumps were also being used in different ways, such as in Japanese shows as eye catchers. These were more of a still image or a short animation in the middle of the show. You can think of the classic cowboy bebop jazz-style bumps they use as an interlude. I myself never saw this style of bump in its prime. As time went on and technology progressed, we moved past the technical necessity for bumps, and they were largely forgotten about for many decades, until networks began using them again, purely for creative reasons this time. These are the bumps that have the most amount of nostalgia around them, as they come from a time when millennials and zoomers were watching TV as children. They look back on these fondly, as they would have been before or after some of their now favourite childhood shows and memories. They can remind most people of the simpler times when you didn't pick what was on TV, the TV picked for you. Channels like Disney, Boomerang, Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon are all well known for their usage of bumps. However, there's one channel that really stands out to me as having elevated the bump into the creative art form that it is today. They really used the bump to be able to creatively express themselves and the attitude and tone they were trying to get across at the time. I'm of course talking about Adult Swim. Adult Swim demonstrated that you can be creative not only in your shows, but also within the programming around them. However, their bumps started out quite differently from how they are today. If we take a look at the first bump that aired within their program.
All kids out of the pool for Adult Swim. All kids out. Adult Swim.
The tone and attitude of these bumps, however, has remained unchanged for decades and is still cemented in the bumps that we know today. If we jump forward to the mid-2000s, we can see the bump has developed more closely to resemble what we know it as today. Adult Swim had also developed massively in this time since their programming started earlier in the decade on Cartoon Network. They had now grown a large and loyal fan base for their show's creativity. Shows such as the wacky Aqua Teen Hunger Force, the iconic Robot Chicken, and even for a short time, my all-time favourite show, Futurama. It was within this era that they transitioned the bumps over to being the clean white text on the plain black backgrounds, often containing absurd questions and messages from their fans. I personally quite like these bumps, as it often felt like the channel was speaking directly to you as the viewer, leaving you with a sort of parasocial relationship, if you will. It was also within this era that their programming had been extended to all week long. This allowed for even more growth and more shows, in turn leading them to use the bump for the classic What's Coming Up segment for their now daily shows. They also doubled down on the tone and attitude of the bump within this period. I personally quite like these bumps, as it genuinely feels like you can understand the attitude and tone that the channel was trying to express within the bumps at this time. Bumps had now evolved to full visuals, mainly comprising of a plain or abstract video background with some really good music behind them to really help deliver the feeling and attitude that they were going for at that time. With the music tracks now being used coming from such legends as MF Doom, A$AP Rock and Jay Dilla, just to name a few, these bumps definitely had a great feel to them.
And the only TV I would watch is Adult Swim. They had a little blip on saying like, yeah, you think you got some beats, huh? Think you got some tracks, send them over. You know, it seemed like the next week I got an email asking for a track list, and they were playing stuff on the TV, man. And the first thing they played, they made a promo for the Boondocks around one of my tracks. It just, yeah, it blew me away, man. The only TV you watch, you know, you're hearing your music on.
This is the style of bump that I personally enjoy the most. I just think they're really nice. They sound nice, they look nice, they just feel nice. This is the style of bump that ended up evolving into what we're more familiar with today, eventually leading people to create their own bumps on TikTok and YouTube. These bumps still followed the same original tone and attitude set by Adult Swim in the beginning. However, people were now expressing their own creative styles into these bumps. I myself had originally created a set of intros and outros for my other channels inspired by these bumps. Former YouTube giant Rooster Teeth also used these style of bumps in their programming for a while as well. I believe these also inspired me heavily into the bumps that I want to create today. That's why I've ended up creating my own set of bumps to use within my own videos here on YouTube as well. I really enjoy bumps, as they're an extra way of putting in some more creative expression into the videos. I've never really been completely happy with the intros and outros that I've used in my videos over the years, as I'd often feel too long, out of place, or just complete carbon copies of each other with no real creativity behind them. Which is why I enjoy the creative freedom with the bumps so much more, as you can custom create one for each video, but still have them tie uniformly into the bigger brand. As I continue creating content, I'm going to keep experimenting with doing my own bumps as a creative way to express my own tone and attitude for the videos.